Two teams at the top of their divisions meet not for one, but two games this week in Sunrise.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On New Jersey Devils podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Devils your first listen of the day. For everybody on the Devils feed, let me introduce myself. My name is Armando Velez, the host of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And here joining me on today's edition of the show is the host of Locked On Devils, and also broadcaster with the Florida Everblades as well, Trey Matthews. Trey, great to be connecting with you, my friend, and welcome to Florida, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, having come from Arizona, I'll just say the weather, while it's not exactly the same, it's somewhat similar. At least it doesn't snow here. But yeah, the Sunshine State hasn't been all that bad towards me. So thank you. And it's been a minute since you and I have connected on an episode. I think it's been a few years.
Yeah, it has been, and a lot has changed. Do you prefer the dry heat or the humidity? What do you prefer?
I'm gonna have to go with the dry heat in this case because sometimes when it rains or sometimes when it's hurricane season, which I think we're still in the midst of, it could be a little too much at times. I could count on like two hands the amount of time it's rained in Arizona. So I'm gonna have to go with dry heat in this case. And plus the difference is like here's how I compare it. Like, you know how like after it rains and then it becomes really hot, I always say it feels like I'm suffocating. Whereas for Arizona, like it doesn't rain that often. So it's like you don't feel any humidity. So that's just how it is.
Yeah. And obviously you getting a big chance to work with the Florida Everblades. You sent me a shot of you and Jake Maurice discussing the pregame prior to a game a few weeks ago there. So also great to see that you are moving on up in the world. And also just I want to get your impressions of just Florida hockey from afar and then coming over here, because you've had your chance to cover hockey in Arizona prior to the Coyotes move and attending Arizona State. So a little bit of your impressions of the hockey scene here.
Well, first and foremost, great memory. Second of all, I think Florida. I don't think when you think of hockey, you think of Florida. That's what people have told me. But Florida, they definitely care about their hockey. Like when I'm going to Hertz Arena covering a game, it gets really loud. And I know it's just ECHL. I know it's minor league hockey, but they really do care about their hockey. They can sometimes be put into a frenzy, and sometimes it gets to a point where I'm just like, I probably need earplugs. But no, honestly, the Florida culture when it comes to hockey, it's been really good. Can't complain.
Yeah, and of course, Fort Myers being and Estero being part of the Panthers TV market there, although the Everblades are no longer the affiliate of the Panthers, but still great to see how much the sport has grown. But of course, we're here to talk Panthers Devils and to discuss this upcoming series for these two teams, as Trey will also be at Amerant Bank Arena Tuesday and Thursday, along with the Saturday game for Devils Lightning there. But Trey, for the New Jersey Devils, the best way I could describe last season for them is stubbing their toe. That's really the best way I could put it, because they made it to round 2 in 2023, and a whole bunch of things happened of underachieving. I mean, various injuries to Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Timo Meier. Michael McLeod was dealing with his off-ice legal issues and still is dealing with it 61 games through. Lindy Ruff gets canned, which the first game after that was against the Florida Panthers, weirdly enough, there. But then 5 different goalies. There's a saying, if you're playing more than 2 goalies, chances are you have none. But crazy to think about this whole offseason, and even prior to that, you trade a 3rd-round pick for Jake Allen and then a 1st-round pick this offseason for Jacob Markstrom, and all of a sudden you have a tandem just like that coming into it. And of course, the hiring of Sheldon Keefe, which I thought the Toronto Maple Leafs were starting to play that playoff style hockey towards his last year. And we saw it in the round one, even though they lost. But of course, the time comes due for a coach when they're with an organization that long. So it's to the Devils' benefit, it seems like. So what have your impressions been on this season as far as the coaching and the goaltending?
Well, it's still a work in progress. The most games that the Devils have won in a row this season is 3. But I'm seeing a lot of good improvement from this New Jersey team, because last year, the only thing that was consistent with that Devils team was their inconsistency, as you said. And part of it is the amount of injuries they had to deal with, to Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, players like that. That's really hard to maintain yourself if you don't have your star players out there. Dougie Hamilton, he missed 75% of the season. It was definitely a slow grind for New Jersey, and halfway through the year, see, when you fire your coach, in the words of Christy Flannery, who's your associate over at the Hockey News, she says, like, when you fire a coach, it sort of gives your fan base an idea that something's changed, when in reality, all the Devils did was just name interim head coach Travis Green the replacement for Lindy Ruff momentarily. And nothing really changed. The Devils were still very inconsistent, and they had, come the deadline, they were sellers. They got rid of Tyler Toffoli, Colin Miller. They bring in Jake Allen, which was somewhat intriguing. Allen actually did pretty well and still is doing well. I just think overall the Devils just had to get to the offseason, hit the reset button. And here's the thing that Tom Fitzgerald had to do. It was like, okay, do not go for the big name players, like, because we saw it with the Predators. They were going for people like Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. That's not what the Devils needed. The Devils needed to find some filler pieces, and they did that. So they got Stefan Nason, they got Paul Cotter, they got a better goaltender in Jacob Markstrom. They got some more help on their back end in Brendan Dillon and Brett Pesce. Those are some players that don't really jump out and say, like, oh, these are probably top players on every team's radar. But no, it's what the Devils needed. They needed some more bottom six depth. They needed some more depth on their blue line. They needed a better goaltending tandem, because I said, while Jake Allen was solid, he should not be the starter. He needs some help in that sort of aspect. So I applaud Tom Fitzgerald for getting to work and just trying to reset this Devils team. And it's a slow grind, because they've played the most games out of anyone in the NHL. They haven't had that much practice time. They kicked off their season in a different continent, in Prague, for the Global Series. So it's, and on top of that, they got a new coach. So it's like, okay, you got a new head coach who has a new system. You got all these new players. You're playing the most games in the NHL. Honestly, they're doing pretty well for what's been dealt to them. And I think once it starts to slow down just a little bit more, this Devils team will be just fine. So while the points percentage doesn't really reflect how talented this Devils team it potentially can be, honestly, I don't think there's any cause for concern.
None. And I mean, Jesper Bratt is still picking up right where he left off this season. I mean, Nico Hischier in the first few weeks of the season, I mean, it's been a while since he's scored a goal.
Watch out. Hey, I'll just say this. Watch out, Sasha. Watch out. You might not win the Selke this upcoming year again. The Nico Hischier might give you a run for your money.
I'm with that. Like I think there is a chance that there could be a challenge there for the Selke there. I mean, but hey, he's definitely picked up the more of the goal scoring, especially in the early parts of the season. Like you mentioned, Stefan Nason adding that depth to with 7 goals as well for the Devils. And also, I'm looking at every category for them. They're top 10 in almost every category: goals for, goals against, power play, penalty kill. The only one that they're outside of the top 10 is shots for, but they're still finding ways to find the back of the net, even in their little bits in their little bits of opportunity as well. And also, I got to give a special shout out to South Florida native Seamus Casey, who scored during the global series in the beginning part of the season, which
he got I don't mean to cut you off. He got off to a good start. Right now he's in Utica, and it's funny you mentioned that. Someone actually brought up Seamus Casey to me while I was first moving down to Florida, saying like his family owns some sort of restaurant business in this area. I don't quote me on that, but something similar to that. So Seamus Casey definitely has some sort of legacy and impact here in the Fort Myers area.
Yeah,
and he actually practiced at Hertz Arena constantly.
Yep. Him and Gavin Bridley are two guys who definitely grew up there right before their leaps in their hockey development as well. But hey, we got a whole lot left to talk about here on this special crossover edition between Locked On Panthers and Locked On Devils. So we are going to continue that and more next. Today's episode is brought to you by Select Quote. And the World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammate when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. Then they can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. Select Quote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and be the healthiest, best version of you. Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. And these policies are more affordable than you think. You can get coverage up to $1 million as little as $20 per month. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you or for less at selectquote.com/lockedonhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonNHL.
And now let me tell you guys about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Go to FanDuel.com to look at the odds. And please remember to always gamble responsibly. All right, Armando, I got some questions lined up regarding the Florida Panthers. And let me just say, I am so glad you reached out to me earlier this morning to do a potential crossover, because I was actually going to ask you if you wanted to potentially do a crossover to discuss Panthers and Devils, because we need to talk about the defending Stanley Cup champions. And it's really hard to get to the Stanley Cup final, period. But the Panthers did it twice in a row. They lost to the Vegas Golden Knights, but the very next season, just a few months ago, they beat the Edmonton Oilers. However, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. They did blow a 3-0 lead, and it did go to Game 7, but I'm sure they breathed a big sigh of relief once they won Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. Can we just go back to your emotions of covering a Stanley Cup caliber team? Because I've been covering the Devils for a few years, and they haven't been close to reaching that sort of level yet.
The two runs are so different, and also the mindset behind it, because it's crazy to think. The waivers came out today, and Andreas Athanasiou of the Chicago Blackhawks was placed on waivers. Why is that relevant? Well, if that is the last time Andreas Athanasiou plays for the Chicago Blackhawks, he is a Panthers legend due to the Chicago Blackhawks beating the Pittsburgh Penguins on April 11th, 2023 to get the Panthers into the playoffs in the first place for them. And then the upset that created so much momentum for the Panthers there in defeating the Bruins, coming back from 3-1. And then by the time they got to the Stanley Cup final, too many injuries. The injuries were too much to overcome for the Panthers in their pursuit of their first Stanley Cup there. And honestly, I'll tell you the truth. Even at full strength, I don't think the Panthers were going to beat that Vegas Golden Knights team that year for them. And it was just when you think about how much the middle of the ice was just protected for the Vegas Golden Knights and Adin Hill, that was just a really hard to get to the net front for them in that series. And also just the mission to get back and dealing with the injuries of Montour and Ekblad, and also guys stepping up like an OEL, Anthony Stolarz playing 25 plus games for the Panthers, and also the fact that the goaltending, they were healthy all year for them, and that really truly helped Sergei Bobrovsky eventually make that run to another Stanley Cup final, which he needed a little bit of that boost when Alex Lyon took the crease towards the end of 2023. It wasn't like that in this time around. But yes, I was close to panicking after Game 6 of the final, but throughout that run, it was mostly the Panthers business as usual. Even though they fell behind 2-1 against the New York Rangers, it felt like the Panthers were still dominating parts of the game, and it really averaged out in Game 4 when Sam Reinhart scored that game winner, and then Paul Maurice even said that's where the series turned. So it really came down to why they blew a 3-0 lead is their inability to stop breakaway opportunities. It felt like for Sergei Bobrovsky, it was 5 breakaway goals in a row that the Edmonton Oilers had at one point in that series. But as the Panthers, there was a stat on their goal differential throughout the periods in the playoffs. The Panthers, every single period, they got better, and eventually that was going to average out. And really, going into the third period of Game 7 with a lead, which the Panthers are still, they haven't lost in regulation since March of 2023 when going into the third period with a lead. That is continuing to be Panthers hockey. They had a lead going into the third period on Saturday, but still found a way to win in a shootout.
Okay, so basically this Panthers team, let me just make sure I heard you correctly. They have not lost in regulation since March of last season, right?
Of 2023. When holding a lead into the third period, all their 4 losses have been in overtime or in
overtime. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's fast forward to this season, because like I said, they are now the reigning Stanley Cup champions and they're looking to defend their title. Now, you mentioned Brandon Montour, and the thing is, like, Montour no longer on the team, so the Panthers kind of lost one of their key players on the back end. They also lost Vladimir Tarasenko to the Detroit Red Wings, and I felt as though Tarasenko was a solid contributor. But when looking at this Panthers team, and I said it during the playoffs, this team is just so complete in more ways than one. Last season, Sam Reinhart was the leading point getter. Matthew Tkachuk, someday he can legitimately win the Hart Trophy. I firmly believe that. Sasha Barkov, he's won a couple Selkies. Carter Verhaeghe was a solid contributor. Sam Bennett, Evan Rodriguez, and shout out to former Devil Dmitry Kulikov. Mm-hmm. I think this Panthers team was just complete up and down the lineup. And yes, they had Sergei Bobrovsky in net, but make no mistake, the people in front of them were definitely not scrubs. Now, like I said, you lost some key players in Brandon Montour, who is now with the Seattle Kraken, right? Mm-hmm. And you also lost Vladimir Tarasenko. So I know, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, the core for the Panthers still remains intact, but it's just like when you lose some of your key depth assets, like I said in the first segment for the Devils, it can definitely hurt you in more ways than one. Now, I'm just going to ask you this. Do you think the Panthers have a chance to obviously, I barring anything catastrophic, they're going to go back to the playoffs. But do you think they can become back to back a team that goes to the finals 3 straight years and possibly win it 2 years in a row, like their rival, the Lightning? They'll be the first team to do that since Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and even before that, Pittsburgh doing it two years in a row for them. And there's a chance. There truly is a chance, but there's still questions on whether their units that they put together will work long term. I mean, thankfully, the Panthers have been able to insert Uvis Balinskis on their top power play unit, which Uvis Balinskis was a big part of their first 16 games when Montour and Ekblad were hurt. He was still on his entry-level contract after the Panthers found him in the World Championships. And then using him being a waiver exempt at the time still created that depth in their system at the time, even though their system is a little depleted right now. But for the Panthers, that there's still questions to see on whether that could last more than just a few weeks for them. Adam Boquist was supposed to be the guy who is going to take the power play one for the Panthers, and he got hurt for one game, went back into the lineup, had a little bit of consistency issues at 5-on-5, but for the Panthers, this is what they have right now. And also still building off what they have from the other side of special teams in their PK unit, but adding 2 guys who could play those minutes and take the little bit of the pressure off of Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov, who plays those top minutes, as 2 big defensive forwards as well. So Jesper Boquist, who's been the better of the Boquist brothers with the Panthers, and also been able to shift to center when the Panthers have been missing Sasha Barkov for 8 games. Excuse me. Matthew Tkachuk missed a little bit of time with an illness, so they've been able to pick up those right where they left off, and still. And also there's been a little bit of a graduation of Anton Lundell stepping into the top line for the Panthers in that short stint. And also Sam Bennett in a contract year, 9 goals, not much of a point producer for him, but off to a great start. And also Sam Reinhart tied for the league lead in goals with 11, along with the guys like Tage Thompson, Cole Caulfield up there, just to name a few, Nikita Kucherov. So also the fact that they're getting those contributions all around is truly helping.
Shout out to Jesper Boquist, Tomas Nosek, and AJ Greer. I already shout out Kulikov, but yeah, a lot of former Devils players playing for the Panthers right now. Lots of that. All right. When looking at the stats, the Panthers, they're one of the best teams when it comes to the power play alongside the Devils. Devils ranked number 5, Panthers number 7. Penalty kill, Devils number 7, Panthers number 5. Face-off percentage, the Panthers are one of the worst teams in the NHL when it comes to face-offs. Devils are the 11th best. Goals for, Devils are 10th, Panthers are 5th. Goals against, Devils are 7th, Panthers are 11th. I think the key stat that really jumps out to me is the face-off win percentage. Now, that might seem a little like unimportant for some people. Like, they're just like, who cares? It's a face-off. As long as you're able to get a goal in more ways than one, who cares about a face-off? No, that's how you get possession, especially if you're in your defensive end. Like, that is so crucial. And winning off the face-off in your offensive end, that can do wonders for you, and you can put full pressure on your opponent. So what's going on with the Panthers in that sort of regards? Because I just listed the numbers. For the most part, they're still a very dominant team, but why are they in the bottom tier in the league when it comes to faceoffs? And is there anything that they need to work on? Because I'm sorry, and before you answer it, just speaking from experience, the Devils were one of the best faceoff teams in the league last year, but Michael McLeod, their best faceoff person, when he had to, quote unquote, take his leave of absence, that hurt the Devils. So, and that was crucial to them. So can you just provide some insight on that?
Yeah. Only 3 guys are over 50%. Lundell, Alexander Barkov, and Tomas Nosek are the only ones right now. And Tomas Nosek has just returned to the Panthers as of last week for the Global Series in Finland for them. So really the majority of the lineup under that, but really for the Panthers, thankfully for them, their ability to exit the puck out of the zone and still get the pucks in deep to get in on their forecheck and win their board battles has really been crucial to to still not create some of their scoring chances and to still dominate possession, because their Corsi is still over 50%, even with their face-off, with them winning their face-off. So not a point of concerns right now. It's more of a concern if it's on special teams, which thankfully the Panthers, even regardless of that, they're in the tops towards that. So that's really thankfully for them. That's really what sticks out for when you look at the eye test of how they're winning their battles. So that's for that. But let's transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more of the New Jersey Devils, and I'm going to ask Trey this question on the other side of the break. What is their ceiling? We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On New Jersey Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and you can now win 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And PrizePicks puts members first, with all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. If you think that Connor McDavid will get more than 0.5 goals, you can do that all on PrizePicks. You could cook up the hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you and your crew run games on PrizePicks. And download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. And you can do that all on PrizePicks. Run your game. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On New Jersey Devils your first listen of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And by the way, tonight, their game against the Devils, 7:30, ESPN Plus exclusive. Once again, Trey will be at both games in Sunrise, Florida on Tuesday and Thursday, and will also be at the game on Saturday when the New Jersey Devils take on the Tampa Bay Lightning from Amalie Arena. So, when you look at the Devils, their build is so interesting based on getting 2 number 1 overall picks in 3 years with Heiser and Hughes. Hughes took a little bit for him to get really truly get on the scene, but hey, his ceiling is extremely high. And also the fact that there isn't a single player outside of who makes more than $9 million with the cap going up. We're out of COVID. You spoke about the depth players that they got during the offseason. It wasn't big spending for them. And $4.1 million in cap space. I remember Kobe Cohn of Morning Cup of Hockey was still talking about the Devils needing a sniper in their lineup. And also the fact that still for them, they still have some. We spoke about Seamus Casey earlier. They still have Simon Nemec also in Utica, who still has yet to really burst on the scene there. So this is a great build right now. And also the expiring contracts really is a lot of older players for them. So this window could just be opening for them. I know they made the second round just a few seasons ago, but how are you seeing this build? Because Carolina, there's still questions on them, whether their early success can last, along with Washington, which Washington has proven that their coach is legit for them. Islanders are taking a step back as we expected. And still, New York, very goalie reliant for them, in my opinion. And the bill is going to come due next season. But how are you seeing the Devils? Because I think they have an outstanding future.
Well, the future is here, if we're being completely honest, because Jesper Bratt and Nico Hischier, believe it or not, they almost have 10 years of NHL experience under their belt. Jack Hughes has a few years of NHL experience under his belt. I spoke to Mike Moriel of NHL.com over the summer. And the thing is like, yes, while this team is relatively young in terms of age, when we're looking at the actual experience, you can no longer say like, oh, they're young, they're just going to get right into it in a few years. No, you got to try to capitalize on it right now. And like I said, it's to a point where you can't call Nico Hischier or Jesper Bratt young guns in the league because they almost have 10 years of experience. That's the thing, believe it or not. I was stunned to see it as well. I like I said, off the top of my head, I believe it's 8 years. And just I think for this Devils team, especially with Sheldon Keefe at the helm, it's playoffs or bust. Like, I remember I was asked what would happen if the Devils missed the playoffs. And obviously, depending on the circumstance, I don't really know. I really don't know. This team is built for success, and they have to try to capitalize on it right now. I'm not saying they have to win the Stanley Cup this year, although that would be really nice. But it's just like they need to take that step forward, and they can't just be a team where they make the playoffs, they miss the playoffs, they miss the playoffs, then they make the playoffs. That's not going to get you anywhere. So the Devils just have to overall just get back to the playoffs. And I already see the jokes, people saying like, oh, Sheldon Keefe is just going to get them to the first round and then they're going to get knocked out. Look, if they make it to the first round of this year's playoffs, then that's actually an improvement compared to last year because they missed the playoffs last year. So technically that's an improvement. Then we'll crawl before we walk. Overall, I just think this team, they definitely have the right assets. They have star power in Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton, Timo Meier. All those guys are all stars. And then you got some more grit, you got some more toughness in Brendan Dillon, Curtis Lazar, who's injured and out for an extended period of time. But once he returns, he could definitely provide that sort of spark. We've already seen it a little bit this season. Stefan Nason, Paul Cotter, Eric Haula has been a big surprise in my opinion. This Devils team has a lot of talent up and down their lineup, and I can already see people say like Jacob Markstrom, Jake Allen, they're not really all that good. I get what the numbers say, but call me crazy. For some reason, both those goalies pass the eye test for me. Like, I'm not seeing anything that's alarming. I get what the numbers say, but this is one of the rare times I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to go against the numbers and just say, just from my eye test and what I've seen in a big sample size, I don't think goaltending is going to be their biggest issue this year because Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen, I think they both have looked very solid, and sometimes they just get no offensive help or sometimes they get no defensive help. In the previous game against the San Jose Sharks, in which the Devils lost 1-0, Timo Meier scored for the Sharks. You tell me what that means. What does that mean? It means he scored by accident. He tipped it on in off his own stick. Like, he was helping the Sharks. I'm just like, Timo, you played for the Devils. You haven't played for the Sharks in over a year, but it just happened that way. Or Devils were down 3-1 against the Islanders late in the third period, and the Islanders blew an infamous 3-1 lead. It just happened. So, like I just asked you about the Panthers, can they get back to the Stanley Cup? Do they still have the firepower to do so? You gave your answer. My answer is this. I think this Devils team, while I don't think they're anyone's favorite choice to win the Stanley Cup, I think they could be a dark horse if they get everything and mesh it well together. So I have high hopes for this Devils team.
Yeah, and Jacob Markstrom, I mean, let's think about the resume of the two goalies. I mean, Jake Allen was protected in the expansion draft for Seattle. I mean, I know Carey Price was going through his fair share of injuries and the news regarding that. And also Jacob Markstrom was at one point a Vezina candidate for him. So I know they're both 34 years old on the older side of things, but still, I mean, it's a very small percentage of the cap, and you still have an opportunity to reset things in a few years and still look for things outside of that. But at least for what they're making now, I mean, also the numbers say under 3 goals a game. It's funny because the Panthers had a game against the Islanders where the Islanders blew a 3-0 lead and the Panthers scored 6 unanswered, and I saw that the Devils have played quite a few Metropolitan games in their throughout the season, and a lot of them have been close. At least most of them. It looks like that the Devils mostly have win big and lose close, at least from what I'm seeing, at least averaging out for the most part. So it's not mostly blowouts for them. So that's the thing. They're staying in games.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. There's nothing to be concerned, at least on my end. They're still one of the top teams in the Metro. In fact, they're first in the Metropolitan Division. And they've played 18 games up to this point, which is the most in the NHL, which I'm still very confused about. I'm just like, how have the Devils played 18 games, whereas the Sabres have played 16 games? If the Sabres were the team that that we're also the team in the Global
Yeah.
Series in Prague. That doesn't make any sense. The schedule is just chaotic, and unfortunately, it doesn't fall into the Devils' favor. But yeah, 18 games so far this season. That's I don't know. I'm flabbergasted.
However, on Saturday, after Saturday's game, they'll have a little bit of a break right before they welcome in the Carolina Well, not what I saw on the schedule. I don't know who's home for that one. I believe they're at home on that one, but a little bit of a break so that the games in hand for the rest of the division could average out and that you could see more of how the points percentage falls for the New Jersey Devils during this quick trip to Florida. But Trey, I want to thank you so much for doing this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Devils with me. Tell everybody where they can follow you online.
You can follow me at TreyMatt4. You can also find Locked On Devils wherever you get podcasts from, available on YouTube and available on all streaming platforms. And Armando, you want to do the same thing?
Yep. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And also you could see my writing on the Hockey News. So Trey, thank you so much and hope to reconnect with you soon, my friend.